you believe it? The number of homeless people in New York has grown so large that it has formed an entire mole world right beneath the surface of this enchanting city. There is no oversight or any laws from the authorities. It exists like an underground city full of mystery and complexity. The homelessness crisis stretches from the bustling, brightly lit streets of Manhattan to the quieter corners of Staten Island, where thousands of people have to wander without shelter each night. Not stopping there, the homelessness situation is so alarming that even veterans, those who once sacrificed their youth to protect the country, have to live in old trucks or wander the cold streets. Is New York facing the worst crisis since the Great Depression? Does this city have the strength to revive the American dream that is gradually fading in the hearts of millions of people? In today's documentary, we will reveal the heartbreaking truths about the ever-increasing number of homeless people in New York City. Surprising and shocking stories are still waiting for you ahead. First, one thing you will never expect. The homelessness rate in New York has increased by 175% in just the past 20 years. The city, once known as the place where millions of dreams came true, is now facing an unprecedented homelessness crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Even more astonishing, for every 106 New Yorkers, there is one homeless person, a number that shocks many. The glamorous images of New York with its brightly lit penthouses are now overshadowed by a heartbreaking reality. 80,000 homeless people are trying to survive in this city. From the glamorous Manhattan with its towering skyscrapers to the peaceful neighborhoods like Staten Island, homelessness is present everywhere. Manhattan, a symbol of luxury with its penthouses shining brightly, now has over 4,000 people living on the streets and in public parks. Just a few steps, and you will encounter a person lying on the sidewalk, battling the biting cold of a New York winter. Notably, out of every 10 students, one does not have a stable place to stay. The sight of people sleeping on the sidewalks, sitting beside trash bins, has become a familiar image. Amidst the splendor of the bustling metropolis, tens of thousands of people live in fear every day. For them, a warm and kind place to rest is not a normal thing, but a luxurious dream that seems forever out of reach. You know, although New York is hailed as a leading cultural and economic center of the world, behind that glamour, tens of thousands of people are sinking into extreme poverty. While the wealthy can spend thousands of dollars on a lavish dinner, the homeless have to struggle to earn a few cents to buy a loaf of bread. Is this a sign of a New York that is gradually collapsing? What is really happening behind this glamorous facade? Please like the video and continue to uncover shocking secrets with us. You will surely be amazed to know this. The homeless population in New York is so large that there is an entire mysterious mole world right beneath the glamorous New York. It sounds unbelievable, but there is a group of people known as mole people, an elusive community estimated to number between 5,000 and 25,000 individuals. They live hidden in the maze of subway tunnels and utility corridors sprawling throughout the city. These people have created small, secret communities, completely separated from the light and public attention. One of the scariest places is the tunnel near the Hudson River, which has now become an underground slum, filled with garbage and human waste. You would think that a nightmare place like that. Why would they still choose to live there? But the reason will break your heart even more. For the homeless people living there, this is their final refuge in life. There is no governing authority, no laws imposed from the world above. The underground communities exist quietly like urban ghosts. In the eternal darkness, they live, work, and strive tirelessly to survive each day. completely isolated from the splendor and luxury of the city above. Deep within the earth of New York, the homeless have erected makeshift houses out of plywood and cardboard. Inside, they decorate their living space with various simple yet essential items: carpets, beds, nightstands, wood stoves, oil lamps, and even pets. On the damp and cold walls, colorful graffiti artworks appear like artistic traces in the eternal darkness. The only things we don't have are water and electricity, they admitted. However, for some people, life underground is where they find freedom. Here, I can be myself. I no longer trust anyone up there, and I don't have to endure their judgment anymore. Next, when we think of homelessness, we often think of the poor, those with low or unstable incomes. But now, sadly, even veterans have fallen into a situation of having no home. Can you believe it? The veterans who once protected the country now have to face the scene of poverty, homelessness. The soldiers who once dedicated their youth and health to serve the nation now have to sleep on the cold sidewalks, as if they have been forgotten by society. They risked everything for the country, but upon returning, many found themselves in difficult circumstances with no solid support to reintegrate into life. Although the homelessness rate among veterans has decreased by nearly 8%, from 35,574 people in 2023 to 32,882 people in 2024, this number is still too large to accept. Nearly 33,000 people who once served in the military are now wandering the streets or relying on shelters. Did you know? Nearly half of renters in the US have to spend more than 30% of their income just to have a place to live. For many people, this is already a tremendous financial burden. But for veterans, those who once served the country, it is even more difficult. After returning, many people struggle to reintegrate, having to rely on meager benefits, while the cost of living continues to skyrocket. They not only face the worry of making ends meet, but also endure stigma, unemployment, and unresolved mental health issues. Just a small setback, losing their income or benefits, and they can easily fall into homelessness, with no way out, no place to turn. This is not just a personal sad story, but also a poignant reminder of the difficulties many veterans are facing. After leaving the military, they have to bear financial pressure, face difficulties in finding employment, and strive to secure stable housing amidst the rising cost of living. Do the people who once served the country deserve to go through this situation? What policies has the government implemented and is currently implementing to support them? Let's continue exploring together. New York, the city of million-dollar apartments, but the residents have to live in trucks. Imagine having to choose between paying $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment or living in a camper on the side of the road. Sounds like a fictional story, but this is the sad reality happening in New York. As rental prices soar to unimaginable heights and the cost of living reaches record levels, a community of people living in trucks and RVs has quietly emerged in the heart of the city. These vehicles are parked around Red Hook Park, where children still play every day. But the traditional residents of the area are showing discontent due to concerns about security and hygiene. Without money for rent, they are forced to live a life called van life. However, what is worth pondering is that they are not irresponsible or inconsiderate people. They are just people who can no longer afford rent in a city where living here almost means you have to earn over $120,000 a year to get by. A man living in an RV shared, "I don't have $3,000 to pay rent. If I did that, I would go hungry." Even though they clean up after themselves and do not cause disorder, the presence of the camper vans is still considered illegal. The authorities are considering stricter measures, from banning long-term parking to tightening vehicle inspection regulations. Is this city forcing the poor into a corner? Instead of providing affordable housing, New York pushes them out of every public corner. Homeless people not only have to face the cold, but also endure constant eviction from the authorities. When the trend of living in vans is praised as a symbol of freedom and adventure on social media, with images of fully equipped mobile homes, luxurious kitchens, and even movie projectors. The reality behind it is completely different for thousands of homeless Americans. For them, living in a car is not a choice, but the only way to survive. Slocum, who is disabled, has been forced to live in his old truck since 2019 after losing his home due to a dispute with his neighbor. He has tried for many years to find a suitable apartment but has not succeeded. Now, the 2005 Chrysler Town and Country has become a home. Reluctantly, but with no other choice, he tried to turn the cramped car into a livable space. He insulated the car to cope with the freezing weather and installed a solar panel to power the small TV and laptop. The mattress in the back became a bed, while the makeshift kitchen was only enough to boil a pot of water. At first, he tried to stay optimistic, seeing it as an adventure. But reality quickly dashed all hope. He didn't have a bathroom and had to use a nylon bag as a toilet for many years. His body hasn't been shaved or properly washed since he moved into the car. I try to stay as clean as possible, Slocum shared. But every time I go shopping, I'm always worried that others can smell me. However, that is just a part of the countless difficulties he faces. The cramped space makes him almost only able to lie down or crawl, unable to exercise or move. Food sources are also scarce. Vegetables and fresh foods quickly spoil in the stifling conditions, forcing him to eat unhealthily. The peak was in early 2020 when Slocum had a heart attack, a hefty price for this lifestyle. However, what keeps him maintaining that lifestyle is the rare sense of freedom it brings. Not having to worry about rent, he can move through many parking lots around Batavia, near the northern New York area, where he needs to be close to the doctor. I like the feeling of being able to get up and go anytime without worrying about the house, he said. But is that freedom worth sacrificing when all basic needs are lacking? This is not just Slocum's personal story. The situation of vehicular homelessness is rapidly increasing across the United States as housing costs become unaffordable for many. Living in a truck is not an adventurous dream, but a nightmarish dead end for thousands of people. Not stopping there, have you ever thought that one of the greatest symbols of New York, the subway system, has now become an involuntary shelter for the homeless? These images inevitably leave many people shocked. On the cold benches of the subway cars, one can see people curled up in thin blankets, resting their heads on old backpacks. A man trudges along, dragging a nylon bag filled with beer and soda cans, while another dozes off, clutching an empty pizza box tightly. The entire train car sank into silence, with only the heavy breaths of the homeless, those who were all too familiar with the hardships of this city. This is the first time I've slept on the subway. A cold and restless sleep. This is the sharing of Shanira Hobgood, a 25-year-old young woman slowly sitting up after a makeshift night of sleep on the subway. She has been homeless for many years, ever since she had nowhere else to go. Graduated from high school, attended college, but now Hobgood is unemployed and no longer welcomed by friends when asking for a place to stay. 2 weeks ago, her hands turned purple from the difficult cold, forcing her to choose this place to escape the chill. "At least the subway has heating and I can stay overnight," she said helplessly. She's not the only case. In the shadows of glamorous New York, there are thousands of people like Hobgood trying to hold on each day. Gene, a trumpet player, suffers from schizophrenia. He wanders through the subway stations, making a living with solitary melodies that resonate amidst the crowd. On cold nights, Gene occasionally stayed at his parents' house in the Newark area, but most of the time he had to sleep on the train. "The E train is both warm and safe," Gene explained, "but many other lines are not. A completely different New York exists underground. The New York subway, the pride of the city, now reveals a heartbreaking reality. What was once a symbol of modern life is now a place where suffering people flee from the terrifying cold. They did not choose this way of life, but it seems the city has given them no other choice. Is New York still a dream destination for millions? Or has it gradually turned into a nightmare for its poor residents?" Please share your thoughts. Ironically, instead of supporting the homeless with long-term solutions, New York City has chosen a highly controversial path, installing spikes and anti-fare evasion barriers in the subway system. Is this solution a clever invention or just a modern tragedy? It sounds like a scene from a science fiction movie, but this is the reality in New York. Instead of focusing on providing housing or psychological support for those in need, the city is trying to control the situation with physical barriers. What the authorities did not expect was that the fare evasion expert quickly came up with countless ways to get through. From wearing gloves to avoid being pricked by thorns, to crawling under barriers like professional athletes. These daring fare evasion stunts immediately became viral content on social media. However, behind those humorous images lies a heartbreaking truth. The suffering of the homeless is never given the same attention or widespread dissemination. Not only barriers, many train stations have also removed seats and installed glaring LED lights to prevent homeless people from sleeping there. This has caused public outrage. A social activist said, "They don't need bright LED lights all night. They need a roof over their heads and real help." These measures seem to push the homeless to the margins of society instead of lifting them up. Is this a more callous solution rather than a sustainable direction for a modern city? Mayor Eric Adams acknowledged the inadequacy. Homeless people with mental illnesses are taken to hospitals for a short time and then released without long-term support. They return to the train station facing the cold, danger, and isolation. A homeless woman shared tearfully, "We need real help, not these barbed wire fences." Although barriers and LED lights have been installed at over 100 stations, many people still question the effectiveness of this measure. Is this an act of shifting responsibility instead of addressing the root of the problem? So where is the root cause? It may sound strange, but earning $100,000 a year in New York can still land you in debt and poverty. Do you think that amount is enough to live comfortably? Don't dream, because in this city that never sleeps, the American dream can easily turn into a nightmare after just a few bills for housing and basic expenses. In New York, it's astonishing that the cost of living is 129% higher than the national average in the United States. A romantic date? Goodbye $145. A dinner for two costs at least $57. Going to the gym to stay healthy? Be prepared to pay $100 each month. And if you enjoy watching movies, ticket prices have reached $14, more expensive than in most other cities in the US. When everything is expensive, just doing a little shopping will cost you an additional 8.5% in sales tax. But the biggest headache is still housing, the greatest nightmare for anyone living in New York. The average house price in this city reaches up to $680,000. If you can't afford to buy a house, you'll have to face notoriously high rent. Each month, the average rent for an apartment is $3,600, a figure far exceeding the advice to allocate only 30% of income for housing. And if you think sharing an apartment will be the solution, sorry, you'll have to live in buildings that are 100 years old, where rats and insects might be your friendliest neighbors. Software engineer Jeremy Bernier, despite earning up to $150,000 a year, still has to rent a $2,500 a month apartment in this old building. And he is not an exception. 40% of renters in New York have to share apartments to ease the financial burden. The American dream, or not enough food to eat, not enough space to live? After taxes, the income of $100,000 is reduced to about $65,000. Meanwhile, just the rent alone nearly consumes all of your income. So many people have no choice but to sleep on the streets or take shelter in their cars, waiting for each meal from charity. This explains why homelessness in New York has reached alarming levels. Is this the American dream that everyone keeps praising? Living as a wanderer, without money to buy a house, eating meal by meal to get by? Perhaps many people have to bitterly admit, no, this is just a nightmare in a city where only the rich can survive. It's hard to believe, isn't it? New York City, the symbol of opportunity and the American dream, is now sinking into the worst homelessness crisis in decades. The stories of the underground Mole City, veterans, homeless people living in dilapidated trucks, and thousands of people wandering the streets, all make anyone think. What will the future hold for those people? Do you think New York can recover from this crisis? Please share your opinion in the comments section below. We would love to hear your perspective to together find a solution for a kinder and better America. We have tried to provide the most useful and accurate information, although we cannot cover every aspect. Consider this the starting point for your journey of exploration and further learning. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to help us continue bringing more meaningful content. Thank you for watching. See you in the next videos.